The midnight mile. The city, even at 2 a.m., breathed with a strange, restless energy. For Elias Thorne, a veteran of 1,000 midnight shifts behind the wheel of his beat-up yellow cab, it was a familiar rhythm. "Where to?" Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet it seemed to fill the cab, resonating strangely in the enclosed space. "The old lighthouse, please." "At Blackwood Point." Elias frowned. Blackwood Point. It was a notoriously remote area, a stretch of rugged coastline miles beyond the city limits, accessible only by a winding, unlit road. The lighthouse itself was long decommissioned, a crumbling monument to a bygone era, abandoned for decades. There was nothing out there but jagged cliffs, crashing waves, and the skeletal remains of old fishermen's shacks. "Blackwood Point, ma'am? Are you sure?" "There's nothing out there, no houses, no businesses." "I assure you, driver," she replied, her voice maintaining that unsettling silken quality. "That is my destination." He caught a faint, almost metallic scent, like ozone mixed with something earthy, clinging to her. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it registered on his senses, an unusual note in the usual symphony of city smells. He shrugged, shifting into drive. A fare was a fare. He watched her in the rearview mirror as he pulled away. Her face was still in shadow, but he could sense her eyes on him, a cold, unwavering gaze that prickled the back of his neck. The city lights slowly faded behind them, giving way to the oppressive darkness of the winding coastal highway. The mist thickened, swirling around the cab, making the world outside the windows a blur of indistinct shapes. The only sound was the rhythmic hum of the engine and the soft, almost imperceptible breathing of his passenger. Elias tried to make conversation a habit of the job, a way to break the sometimes suffocating silence. "Late night, ma'am? No flights out of the airport at this hour." "No," she replied, her voice closer now, as if she had leaned forward. "No flights, just a journey." He glanced at the mirror again. Her face was still obscured by shadow, but he thought he saw a glimmer, a faint iridescence in the darkness where her eyes should be, like moonlight reflecting off wet stone. He quickly looked back at the road. The road grew narrower, unpaved in sections, the old asphalt crumbling at the edges. Trees, gnarled and twisted by the coastal winds, loomed out of the mist, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for the cab. The air grew colder, biting at his exposed skin, a strange, profound cold that felt unnatural, not just the usual chill of a coastal night. The hum of the engine, the distant wail of sirens, the muted glow of streetlights painting the rain-slicked asphalt. It was his world. He'd seen it all. The drunken revelers, the frantic emergency calls, the quiet despair of those returning to empty homes. He cranked up the heater, but the cold seemed to emanate from the back seat, from his silent passenger. He heard it then, a faint, almost subliminal hum, not from the engine, not from the tires on the wet road. It was deeper, resonating in the very bones of the cab, a low, constant thrum that made the fillings in his teeth ache. It seemed to come from her. He tried to dismiss it, blaming fatigue, the strange hour, the isolation, but a prickle of unease was growing, an almost primal sense of wrongness that gnawed at his practiced composure. He'd driven thousands of miles, encountered thousands of people, but this felt different, unsettling. "Are you from around here?" he asked, trying again to break the suffocating silence. "I have been to many places," she replied, her voice soft yet chillingly devoid of inflection. and I have seen many things." He caught a glimpse of something in the corner of his eye. A fleeting shadow, impossibly fast, darting across the road ahead, too large for a rabbit, too silent for a deer. He slammed on the brakes, the cab skidding slightly on the wet asphalt. Nothing, just the swirling mist and the endless dark road. "What was that?" he muttered, more to himself than to her. "A wanderer," she said, her voice closer than before, a whisper right by his ear, even though she was in the back seat. "Like us." Elias gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The hum in the cab intensified, a high-pitched whine now making his ears ache. He felt a profound sense of disorientation, as if the familiar world around him was subtly shifting, twisting into something else. The mist outside the window seemed to coalesce, forming vague, indistinct shapes that danced at the periphery of his vision. Tall, slender figures, their forms shimmering like heat haze. He sped up, needing to get this over with, needing to reach the destination, however absurd it was. He was a professional. He'd finished the fare. The road finally ended, giving way to a narrow, crumbling track that snaked towards the cliff's edge. The sound of crashing waves grew louder, a relentless roar against the silent hum of the cab. The mist here was a solid wall, thick and suffocating. "Here," she said, her voice cutting through the hum. "Pull over here." Elias brought the cab to a halt. They were at the very edge of the cliff, the sound of the ocean, a deafening roar below. Elias prided himself on his unflappable demeanor, his ability to blend into the city's nocturnal pulse, a silent observer in a rolling confessional. He wasn't one for ghost stories or urban legends. His horror came in the tangible form of human desperation and violence. He could barely make out the spectral outline of the lighthouse, a dark, jagged finger pointing into the void. "That'll be $47, Elias said, his voice surprisingly steady, despite the trembling in his hands. Silence. He felt a strange, almost telepathic pressure in his mind, a fleeting image of vast, empty oceans, of crushing depths, and a feeling of profound, alien curiosity. He shivered. "I do not have currency," she whispered, her voice a seductive, liquid sound. "But I have knowledge." A cold, slender hand reached forward from the back seat, its fingers impossibly long, impossibly pale. It glided over his shoulder, not quite touching, but he felt the chill of it, the pervasive cold that seemed to drain the warmth from his body. He stared straight ahead, rigid, unable to move. "You seek answers, Elias Thorne," her voice whispered directly into his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "Answers about loss, about what lies beyond. I can show you. I can take you." He felt a pull, a powerful magnetic sensation drawing him backwards, towards her, towards the overwhelming cold. He smelled it now, clearly. The ozone, the damp earth, and something else. A faint, almost sickly sweet scent, like lilies left too long in stagnant water. It was the smell of ancient things, of deep, dark places. He squeezed his eyes shut, his mind racing. This wasn't human. This was something else, something that shouldn't exist. He remembered Lily, her bright laughter, her curious eyes. He remembered the blinding flash of headlights. He remembered the silence after. This thing was preying on his grief, his vulnerability, offering a perverse kind of solace. He fought the pull, pushing against it with every ounce of his will. He opened his eyes, forcing himself to look at her in the rearview mirror. Her face was finally clear, or rather unclear. It was a shifting mosaic of shadows and light, features coalescing and dissolving. Her eyes were not eyes, but two swirling vortices of darkest black, reflecting the dim glow of the dashboard lights with an unnatural, hungry gleam. Her skin, where he could see it, seemed to shimmer like water under moonlight. And her mouth, it was too wide, stretching unnaturally, revealing not teeth, but a pulsating internal luminescence, a faint, unearthly blue light that pulsed in rhythm with the hum. It was beautiful in a terrifying alien way. It was the abyss personified. "Join us, Elias," the voices whispered. A chorus now, 1,000 alien thoughts, 1,000,000 human fears, all merging, all vying for dominance in his mind. Beyond the veil, beyond the knowing, peace, understanding, a cold, clammy sensation gripped his wrist, pulling, tugging. Tonight, however, the city had something different in store. He'd taken the night shift out of necessity, a quiet agreement with himself to outrun the ghosts of his own past, a reckless decision, a car accident that wasn't his fault but claimed his daughter, Lily, all the same. He felt his fingers slip from the steering wheel. A primal scream tore from Elias's throat, a sound of pure terror and defiance that ripped through the quiet of the cab, a desperate act of self-preservation. He slammed his foot on the accelerator, not caring where they went, just needing to escape. The cab lurched forward, tires spinning on the loose gravel. He threw himself against the door, fumbling for the lock. The entity's grip tightened, the cold searing into his skin, an invisible force pulling him back. He saw the edge of the cliff looming in the mist. Surrender, or plummet into the crushing waves. With a final desperate surge of adrenaline fueled by the memory of Lily's face, not as a ghost, but as a living, laughing child, he yanked the emergency brake with all his might, simultaneously throwing himself out of the driver's side door, rolling onto the muddy ground as the cab, with his silent passenger still inside, skidded on the gravel, teetered for a horrifying second at the cliff's edge, and then, with a slow, sickening groan of twisting metal, plunged into the churning darkness below. The scream that followed was not human. It was a piercing, inhuman shriek that echoed off the cliffs, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage and profound disappointment, 1,000,000 voices crying out in unison. It seemed to tear the very fabric of the night, leaving behind a silence so absolute it was deafening. Elias lay there on the muddy ground, gasping for breath, his body aching, his mind a shattered mess. The mist swirled around him, cold and damp. The only sound now was the relentless roar of the ocean below, consuming the last echoes of the shriek. He pushed himself up, his limbs trembling uncontrollably. He crawled to the edge of the cliff, peering down into the churning blackness. Nothing. The cab was gone, swallowed by the hungry waves. There was no sign of the woman, no sign of anything, just the endless ocean, vast and empty. He walked back, all the way back to the city, his body aching, his clothes soaked, his mind reeling. He must have looked like a madman, stumbling along the deserted highway in the pre-dawn light, but no one saw him. Or if they did, they drove past, avoiding the sight, the madness in his eyes. He sold his license, sold his beat-up yellow car, replacing it with a small, unremarkable sedan. He moved to a small, quiet town in the interior, miles from the coast, far from any ocean. He took a mundane, predictable day job, something that involved numbers and no human interaction. The solitude of the night, the endless miles, provided a canvas for his thoughts, a penance he willingly drove. He knew every shortcut, every pothole, every darkened alley. He knew the city like the back of his hand, or so he thought. He avoids the night, avoids the silence. He leaves the television on, always, a low hum of white noise to drown out the others. He checks his reflection endlessly, scrutinizing his own face, half expecting it to distort, to show the void. He tells himself it was PTSD, hallucinations, the exhaustion of the night shift, the burden of a traumatic past finally catching up to him. He repeats it like a mantra, a fragile shield against the terrifying truth. He clings to logic, to reason. But the shield is riddled with holes. From that day, he still remains thinking about it. He feels the faint, inexplicable cold spots, even in the warmth of summer. He sometimes catches the cloying sweet scent of lilies and ozone on a breeze or in the stillness of the night. He hears faint whispers, just on the edge of hearing, calling his name, promising him oblivion, echoing his deepest regrets, the cries of the lost. He scrutinizes the faces of strangers, the expressions of friends, looking for that subtle distortion, that unnatural stretch of a smile, that emptiness in the eyes, that faint iridescence in the depths of their gaze. He knows it's still out there, in the ocean depths. And he knows with a horrifying certainty that it carried a piece of him with it, a resonance that was forever altered, forever open to its call. He escaped the cab, but he did not escape the entity. He is safe for now, but he is not whole. He is forever haunted by the chilling knowledge that beneath the familiar veneer of our world, ancient, hungry things lie dormant, waiting for the lost, waiting for the curious, waiting for the vulnerable, forever ensuring that some absences, once experienced, can never truly be filled. And he will always wonder what stories it now whispers from the deep, what souls it now assimilates, and if, one day, the tide will bring it back to his shore, to finish the ride he so desperately cut short. The call came through on his ancient dispatch system, a staticky squawk that cut through the silence of the empty streets. Pickup, Elmwood Lane, on the outskirts, just before the old industrial district, a strange place for a fair at this hour, not a usual hotspot. But a fair was a fair. He pulled up to a house that seemed swallowed by shadow, its porch light barely cutting through the thick mist that had begun to roll in from the coast. It was an old Victorian, a relic from another era, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin, its windows like vacant eyes. A single figure stood silhouetted against the dim glow, a woman. She was dressed in a long, dark coat, her hair a cascade of black that framed a face he couldn't quite make out in the gloom. As she approached the cab, he noticed her movements were fluid, almost too graceful, like water flowing over stone. She opened the back door silently and slid in, the sudden chill in the cab hitting Elias before the click of the door. "Good evening," Elias said, his voice a practiced monotone. "Thanks for watching. The veil between our world and theirs is thinner than you think. Each like, each share, each subscription strengthens the connection. Feed the channel before it feeds on you."